So growing up, I used to play cricket in a little cul-de-sac area with a bunch of kids my age, all white, until about the age of 8, when my father had to have a very strong conversation. It was very emotional, to say the least, for me and my older brother at the time, to hear my father telling us that he had to sell the toy shop that we owned because we'd gone bankrupt. And I remember him telling us that even if we had to live in a tent, we're still going to be together as a family. We moved from an affluent area into an area that wasn't even the non-affluent area. We actually moved near a railway track, had an incredibly huge backyard, but an incredibly dilapidated house that was wrought with snakes and rats and in complete disrepair. And after about 2 years of living there, we went into a sort of a low socioeconomic area and lived there for approximately 2 years, maybe even 3 years, 3 or 4 years. Mind you, throughout all these different moves too, even though it was a harrowing type of event that happened to us, I only remember joy growing up and love. So these things are important distinctions to realise too. So I went from an affluent area, growing up in an affluent area, growing up into like near an industrial park, and then the non-affluent area, and I had friends in each of these areas too. Different types of friends at different types of levels of my life. And the school that I lived in actual fact, this area, this whole suburb, there was a distinction between one road that went down the middle, and my elementary school and high school were both on the border of this road, and drew kids from both areas, both sides of the road. And so when I got to grade 10, I was actually really good friends with a lot of people from both sides of these roads. On one side, you actually had one of the highest populations of Indigenous populations in Australia, and on the other side, it was a very upper class side of the road. And when we're talking about a population of around about, I want to say 10,000 people, perhaps. So not overly huge, but I grew up in Scouts, and I always attribute some of those morals to how I looked at life, and also spending a lot of time in the theatre and looking at character and analysing characters, and also learning how to just be present. Probably also had an influence on me, and also doing Taekwondo allowed me sort of to defend myself, or at least not to be messed with in some regard. Not that I was ever a bully, I don't think, but I do definitely remember sticking up to them on a number of occasions. So yeah, by the time I got to grade 12, I was actually school captain of my high school, and had a very strong moral sense that actually rubbed people the wrong way, a few people anyway. So how do I get to all these different stages of my life and feel a sense of comfort? How do I go through these tragic times and come out on top? I remember at university, or just to finish university as a teacher, I actually got stuck with a group of people going canyoning, and we were out overnight, and it was only supposed to be a day trip. But I remember a sense of not worrying, because I was in Australia and I was going to be okay, and somebody was going to go and find us. And I had bush skills to comfort myself, but other people were not in that same boat that what I was in. And I attribute all this to the banner that I've actually lived under. The British coming into Australia and creating a sense of dominance, not just in Australia, but around the world as well. Just even look at the museums, and you'll see the British Museum, you'll see dominance spread all over the place. Or even the cultural stories that we tell ourselves as well, with the big fat white guy being very present. This all gave me probably a sense of comfort in times of trial. Something to think about.